Okay, so I'm Susana Meléndez Whiteman. Nice to have the opportunity to speak with all of you today. So I am the director of sports nutrition at Sam Houston State. And I'm really excited today to share more about sports nutrition and really how it has allowed me to work with athletes and coaches and teams really from all over the world, and how these connections have allowed me to take my learned things from STEM and then kind of blend my own cultural practices with them and then help really meet athletes where they needed me. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a little bit of how I became a sports dietitian. And then towards the end, we're going to kind of go through a mini class of what I would do with my athletes and what I would teach them. And then we're going to find out who the best sports dietitian is on this call. So a little bit about me. So I was born in the US, meaning and to a Mexican household. So I am a first generation American. My family is originally from Sinaloa, that's off the coast of Mexico. So they actually moved up to northern Mexico, and I'm so thankful for that because they just allowed me to kind of live in the US and learn in the US and do everything. And I know that they made a lot of sacrifices and they became citizens as well. So I'm super thankful. Mom, if you watch this later, thank you. So I was that one person that did all the sports in high school. I did cross country, soccer, track, everything that I could do. I was really interested in the sciences, specifically astronomy for some reason, and then health and the body, and just really science in general. I wanted to know why things worked and even the smallest details. Like I wanted to know the why behind everything. And I didn't really understand how much that kind of mentality would play into my life and how much it would play into my role as a dietitian until I reached college. So I think the main topic behind my presentation is that adversity breeds perseverance, because at every point in my life I've had this adversity, as a female, as a minority, as just someone who didn't really have someone else to look at, didn't really have like a mentor to look at that looked like me, and then make this dream of mine happen. So everything that I do, I approach it knowing that even if I fail, there is going to be some form of perseverance, whether it's because we want it or because I learned. So on these pictures from left to right is just me in high school, my family, just so you get to know a little bit more about me. Me playing soccer, doing presentations, lifting weights at a football game. So this is all kind of the things that encompass my life right now. And you'll get to see a picture of my husband later, who is actually a strength coach, and that I currently work beside. So you'll hear a little bit more about that. So I went to the University of Arizona, where I actually started as a Spanish major. I wanted to work for NATO and do translation and interpretation. So I really love the languages, and then I minored in Portuguese as well. So at some point in there, I was actually asked to come into my coach's office because I played D1 soccer, as you heard earlier. And I was actually on a walk-on kind of scholarship basis. So that means that my academics were really good, my grades were really good. And so the coach saw that and said, oh, okay, you don't really need a soccer scholarship, which is great. So I was considered a walk-on. So one day my coach brought me into the office and he told me that he needed me to gain weight. And I am 18 years old, a freshman, just left home, didn't really know how to do that, and didn't really understand where to get help to do that. So as we typically tend to do when we don't know something, the first place we hit up, Google, right? We Google whatever we need to know. How do you do this? What do I do? So naturally, I went and I Googled weight gain. And that's probably the scariest thing that I have ever done, because I receive so much weird, different advice about supplements and what to buy. And I was very confused. So thankfully, I had a older teammate who recommended that I take a nutrition class. And I tell you what, I sat one day in that nutrition class and it kind of just, it fit. and I loved it. And then it kind of took over, and I was able to gain that weight I needed to. And I find it finally just clicked. So at that point, I think by the time I finished taking the class, I was a sophomore. So I'm pretty much halfway through my Spanish translation interpretation major. So I'm thinking, oh gosh, well, here we go. Let's just add another degree in there. So then I went on to combine the two and did nutritional sciences, and really enjoyed biochemistry. So I added biochemistry in there somehow. I was in school for a little while, but I did everything that I loved. And thankfully, I had enough scholarship that I was able to do that. And of course, during the time, I just want to encourage you, if you go to college, there is nothing wrong with working and playing a sport during college, because I had to do that too. I actually worked at our library, so that was a really good time. And I think it really taught me about time management. So next, I want to talk about a little bit about my transition into kind of studying nutrition. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, there wasn't really anyone at the time, 2010, that looked like me doing sports nutrition. Like there were no Latino, Latina sports dietitian, which is my Instagram. There was no one that looked like me doing this. So I had no idea that I could even do this. And it made me also realize that I needed to find someone to kind of help me understand where my role as a Latina was in the world of sports nutrition. So thankfully, I finished my dietetics degree, did my internship, and then this man, his name is Isaac Hicks. So he's now the director of sports nutrition at Indiana University. And he kind of took me on, and it was incredible. And I just want to encourage anyone on this call that if you don't see someone that looks like you, that doesn't mean that you have to stop doing what you love. Because you might be the first person, but you can pull other people that look like you, act like you, have the same cultural beliefs as you do, and you can bring them along. So don't be afraid to kind of pave that path for other people. So a little bit more about my trajectory. So I started at University of Arizona, which you already know. Um, I Sports nutrition is difficult to get into. It's very competitive. A lot of people want to do it. So I started at WIC. So WIC is a community, a government funded kind of program where I worked with women, infants, and children. And there you kind of work with a population of young mothers who are just having babies and don't really know what to eat and don't really know what to feed their babies. So you essentially teach a new mother how to feed their baby and how to prepare bottles, how to what kind of formula to buy, how to breastfeed, specific things like that. And then after that, I went on to work sports nutrition at Liberty University. And then this next kind of little area here is where my husband and I moved to Michigan, and we actually worked at Barwis Methods, and then as an extension, the New York Mets. So that's where I was able to do something really neat, which was work with New York Mets that only spoke Spanish, because their dietitian at the time did not speak Spanish, and she wanted and appreciated that cultural kind of aspect of let's maybe have you meet with a Latina who understands, your food preferences. And that way she wouldn't impose, her eating habits on the athlete. And it was really neat. It was a wonderful experience. She was another really solid mentor for me. And then my husband and I, like I mentioned before, he's a strength coach, and this is him right here holding the national title trophy with me. We actually came out to Texas, and he is the director of football strength and conditioning. And then we kind of came together as a little deal. So it is really fun working with my husband, because this is basically us working as a family. As you can see, I mean, all of our pictures is these. We don't have children yet, but these are our children. So it makes it a lot easier to give them nutrition recommendations that they actually take seriously when they know you care about them. And then lastly, Fuerte Sports Nutrition is just kind of a little bit of a side deal I have. So any athletes that I've worked with at these previous places in the past, that is kind of what I work with them through, so that they can continue to be my athletes. Um, and so next we're gonna talk about why nutrition. Who cares? Why did I become so interested in nutrition? And for this, what I want to do is I want you to take a second and type it in the chat. And I want you to think about how many times a day you make a decision about food. Like, how many times a day do you think about food? So just go ahead and type it in. It can be a small number, a medium number, a big number. I see all day. Same. Me too. 10 to 20. Awesome. Anyone else? Probably 3 times a day. Okay. 10 realistically. Yep. I love it. So there's not really a specific like perfect number that we all think about food, but it can be up to 200 times. And it sounds insane, but because you get to choose what food you have, when you have it, how you're going to cook it, how you're going to prepare it, when you go to the store. Maybe you're thinking about, oh, last Saturday we went to a pizza place and I really liked it. We should go back there. So a lot of those thoughts consume your mind about food all day. And then guess what? You go on social media and everyone's talking about food, posting food recipes. You're seeing, influencers and they're posting pictures of themselves in the weight room and you're wondering, well, what are they eating? So we think about food so much. And there's actually two things that we all do every day, hopefully, eat and sleep. So nutrition and food are really, really huge parts of our lives. So that makes it a little bit easier, I think, in this nutrition space, because I know that I will never run out of people eating, right? Job security is always going to be there. So let's go to the next one if I can. There we go. So there's a lot of careers in nutrition that are available. So the first one and most obvious one is going to be clinical nutrition. So you can work in a hospital and help teach clients or patients about, health conditions. And if someone has, a cardiac issue, you can work with them to help with their heart and tell them what foods to eat, what foods maybe they should eat a little bit less of. And then these are all pictures of different experiences. So on the top left, there's, farmers markets and community nutrition. You can work there and kind of teach people how to, use specific fruits and vegetables for cooking. You can give classes on gardening, on nutrition, on so many different topics. And then this one right here is a recruiting speech. So I actually even work with our recruits. So any athletes that could potentially want to come to our university, I give them a little chat and I convince them that the nutrition services I offer are going to be exceptionally above, our rival schools. There's a lot of dietitians who work in food service, in catering, restaurants, right, that put together menus along with chefs. And then obviously there's sports nutrition, like we're learning about today. There's also more food service. And then there's dietitians who have really neat jobs and work as like social media, I don't want to say influencers, but just social media dietitians, and really just work from home, just try to help teach people how to eat. And then there's dietitians that work in the supplement or food industry, like they work for Danone or they work for Nestle or Chobani. There are dietitians in research as well, like in labs, putting together like formulations of ingredients and really neat things like that. So really, like I said, everyone eats, you can do a lot with it. So what does a sports dietitian actually do? So this is just a little sheet of all of the topics that athletes will come in my office and ask me about. And one of the bigger things I do in during football season, I actually help put together the menu. So everything that we eat, everything that our coaches eat, everything that our staff eats, me and myself and the director of operations kind of put this menu together, as you can see in this picture right here. So we have to be very specific. So if we want only strawberries and pineapples, we have to say that. The amount of chicken we want, how it has to be cooked, what kind of bread we want. If we want to allow the athletes to have this dessert, what time our pregame meal is, what time our postgame meal is. So it is very specific because the way that an athlete is going to eat is going to determine how much energy they end up having on the field. So these are just a few of the topics that I talk to my athletes about. I won't read off all of them, but some of the bigger things are weight loss and weight gain. A lot of the athletes come in and want to know how to learn to gain or lose weight. Some athletes have stomach or gut issues. Some athletes have inflammation. Some athletes want to know if they might switch over to veganism and whether they'll be more successful in their sport or not. So I work to answer all of those questions for the athletes and kind of help guide them along that path. So a day in the life for me is quite a long day. We usually have 5 a.m. set up for our lifts, which start at 6 a.m. So I want to make sure that the boys and all the athletes really stay fueled throughout the day. So that means that I want to get a hold of the food opportunities that I can to put out snacks. So we'll usually have a pre-lift breakfast set up, and then they'll go lift, they'll have practice. So we want another practice. These kids eat, I'm telling you, anywhere from 3,000 to like 6,000 calories a day. Maybe. Sometimes it's even more than that. And the average adult will only consume about 2,000 maybe calories a day. So these guys need a lot of calories to be able to perform on the field. And then, of course, they go to class at some point. They have to eat at some point. They watch film at some point. So this is kind of what my day looks like, just kind of having food available for them and having appointments and presentations available more in the afternoon. And it is difficult for myself to eat, and I am an adult and I even forget to eat sometimes. And it gets to the point where I get hangry. So I make sure that I eat when they eat to keep myself fueled. So these are just a couple of little videos just as a day, kind of a day in the life. This is during COVID. Obviously, we all have our masks on. So this is just me just kind of educating. This is right after practice. So sometimes the space I have is them coming in to grab a snack and me giving them a quick nutrition lesson. Sometimes we have a quick nutrition lesson out on the field while I'm handing them snacks. I think I'm handing him, those are some fruit snacks just to keep his energy levels up during practice and then during the game. And then this last one, we do have recovery smoothies after practice. It's like a constant feeding these kids all day long. So we do have recovery smoothies after practice or something similar to that. And I always use my opportunities to teach them as much as I can while I have their attention, which is usually while I'm feeding them. It just works out really well. So in the next couple of slides, you're going to see some of the athletes I work with. And I already mentioned that compared to a regular person, an athlete is going to need a lot more calories. So sometimes even four more times the calories than a regular person. So what happens when an athlete is not eating enough or is under fueling? Their performance is going to suffer. They're going to feel tired all the time. Just think about how long you can go throughout the day and then you get home at night without eating, and then you're starving. Now imagine tagging like 4 hours of workouts onto that. So that means that you're going to struggle with your mental focus. And even if you're a gamer, there's dietitians that work with just gamers, and they see decreased reaction times, decreased mental focus with gamers who spend more than like 4 hours plus not eating anything, right? Your reaction time is actually going to lessen. So this isn't even just for athletes. This is just for the regular person. And the regular gamers and really everyone. So they see a decrease in muscle mass and testosterone, an increase in energy and injury and illness, and then an increased time it takes to recover. So there's not really an option to underfuel, right? Because there's a lot of things that your body requires energy for. So even as we're all sitting here, your body is using energy. So hopefully we all had breakfast/lunch wherever we might be. But your body uses energy when it breathes. Your body uses energy when you run, when you play an instrument, when you're on the computer, when you're learning. Your brain also uses energy as well. So the more active we are, the more calories that we're going to need. So from now on, this is kind of like your sports nutrition session. this is the session that I would start on with my athletes, and just to start getting them to learn about sports nutrition and kind of teaching them the basics. So, nutrition basics, right? What keeps us fueled? We know that that's food. So, what is in food that keeps us fueled? Calories. So, calorie is just a unit of energy that allows our body to function, that allows our body to do all of those things that I just mentioned. So, I'll talk a little bit about these athletes a little bit later. So the next thing you should know, what is in calories that gives us energy? So in calories, there's three components, and those are called macronutrients. Those are going to be carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And each of these can provide your body with energy, but there's very specific things that each of these really like to do in your body. So the first one, carbohydrates. So this is the body's preferred main source of energy. So they provide quick and long lasting energy, and they fuel your muscles, not build. Notice I said fuel your muscles, and they fuel your brain. So examples of carbs are going to be all the delicious foods like tortillas, rice, oatmeal, plantains. Fruits are also carbs, cereal, bread, quinoa, anything on the potatoes, anything on this picture. And then the next macronutrient is going to be protein. So protein does help provide a little bit of energy, but your body doesn't prefer that it does that. Your body wants it instead to help you build muscle, right? You've probably heard that if you want to build some muscle, you need to eat protein. So it also helps with enzymes, with blood cells, with hair, bones, nails, immunity. So I always mention this to my athletes, just because you eat a ton more protein does not mean that your muscles are going to get massive, right? But what you want to do is lift weights and eat the correct amount of protein, and that is going to help you build muscle. So these are just a couple of food items. Even if you don't eat meat, you don't have to do that. We can have combinations of nuts and seeds and tofu and other things like that, edamame, things that are higher in protein to meet your protein needs. So the last macronutrient of the three is going to be fat. So fat does also provide, fat does also provide energy, and I'm sorry. And it helps make hormones, and then it helps absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K. And those are all going to be these sources of foods right down here. So what we want to do with athletes is we want to make sure that we incorporate all three of these macronutrients, and we want to make sure the athlete has a variety of these three. So enter these performance plates is what they're called. So there's two types of performance plates we're going to talk about today. So this is just kind of like a little map on how to set up your plate. So on the left, you have a light training day. So that's specifically 4 days when you don't have a lot of work to do, when you have a lighter day, when you don't need as many carbs, because remember we said carbs are your body's main source of energy, right?
Susana, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but we
it's
see
okay.
the system alert.
Oh no, do you really? It doesn't let me snooze, so I can just try to push it. Uh-oh. I'm not really sure how to get rid of it. Okay, I'm just gonna hide it. Can you see it now?
All good.
All good? Okay. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, I'll keep going. And it said I had like 14 minutes, so I'm almost done actually. Okay, so getting back to the performance plate. So we just went over the light training day. So next we have our strenuous or hard training day. So this is on the days where we have a lot heavier workouts, right? So when we have heavier workouts, or when we are going maybe on a very long hike, or when we have 2 training sessions a day, when we're on the bike for maybe more than 2 or 3 hours and it's really difficult, we want to eat a little bit more carbs because we want that energy from the carbs. So this is more what your plate should look like at that time, because you need more carbs for energy. So an example of that is going to be like the sandwich and the fruit and the mac and cheese. That's 3 sources of carbs. And then you still have a little bit of color from your fruits and your veggies, and then your protein in here from your deli meats. I think this athlete had turkey. So those are just 2 specific plates. There's actually 4 of them. But these are the 2 easiest ones I have athletes follow. So whenever they're eating out, I just typically tend to have them take a look at these and then make their food decisions based on these. And these are actually also going to help if you're trying to gain or lose weight. If you're going to lose weight, you would want to follow a lighter training day. And if you're trying to gain weight, you would follow a more strenuous training day, which is actually what most adults are following anyway. The majority of us oversaturate our plates with a lot of carbs and then end up seeing a little bit of that weight gain. So a couple of really quick athlete stories before we start our competition, our game. So these are just some of my athletes. This is Haley. So she, as you can see, she has several rings. She's fantastic. So she's a thrower. And she came to me with some gut issues, right? Sometimes it's not always about gaining or losing weight or just performance. Sometimes it's about just general health. So we had to have her write down a list of all of the foods that she was eating every day. And we went through the list and we kind of identified which of those foods were hurting her stomach, were causing her gut issues. And then moving along to the right, this is Noah Steele. So he's on national, I work with a lot of national athletes. So he's on Golf Canada. So he's on the Canadian national team. Stellar athlete. So he has an easier story, was just trying to gain weight, but he was trying to become more powerful on the golf course. So we started working with easy solutions, like just adding in specific snacks into his playing time at the course. And he realized that he started to put on a little bit more weight, had a little bit more energy. And then we'll go down here to the right or down below. So we're looking at this guy right here. This is Alejandro. And he was actually just in the latest Olympics. So he ran the 400 meters very fast. And I remember I had him at Liberty University, and all he needed to do was shave about 0.02 seconds of his time to make it to on the Colombia national team, like a very minimal stretch. So we decided that an approach would be to change his nutrition habits, add a little bit more protein, and he made it onto the team. Whether it was just the nutrition or not, something else, I'm not sure, but it seemed to have worked. And then we have a couple of other athletes, minor league ball player who was trying to gain weight, and then rodeo. A lot of people don't know, but dietitians do work with rodeo athletes as well. And those athletes travel a lot. So we need to help them kind of plan their meals around their travel. So now it's going to be your turn. So we are going to kind of exit out of here and we're going to play a quick little game. So this is called Look It. So you can either do this via your phone or your computer. It's a minute long, and all you have to do is kind of go here and then go to blookit.com. You don't have to do /play, just blookit.com. And then once you're there, you press join a game, and then you type in 244616. And then enter a nickname. And then it'll pop up and kind of let you join. Love it. And you can change that little guide, the picture of that. Okay, we've got a couple more. We'll wait and see if we only have 4 people now, so awesome. Good. Okay, we're gonna start in 20 seconds. Okay, here we go. So look up at the screen. All right, and then answer the questions and try to win. You see people stealing candy. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Good job, guys. So we'll get our leaderboard here in a second. Alexis, I love it. Good work. That's awesome. Thank you guys for playing. Okay, let's go back to this so we can finish up. Excellent job, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed that. So kind of tagging on to the end here, a few of the projects I'm working on, we already had mentioned them. So I'm working on getting some stuff done for Gatorade Sports Science Institute, and I'm working on some food insecurity in sports and athletes, and just talking about how athlete scholarships don't always cover their food needs. As you've heard, athletes need a lot more calories than we would consider, and oftentimes they don't have enough money to make that happen. So they'll come into my office and tell me about how hungry they are, and really, even if they've allowed me to help them budget their meals, we still struggle to make sure they get enough food. And then obviously continuing to mentor undergrads and kind of have them work with me and help bring them along. And then the last thing is just the DEI that was mentioned earlier, and helping educate some of our coworkers and some of our colleagues, and helping us reach those cultural goals that we have set, and being able to reach more of our athletes through that. So I think that's it. Thank you so much for having me. And if we have any time for questions, I would love to take a few.
Perfect. It's a great that you stated time for questions. So I'll be asking a few questions. I actually wrote down a few. Some of them I know you didn't cover in your presentation. So my first question, just because this is something I think that is important and it's also gaining more popularity, just in like everyday conversations, is as a nutritionist, how do you think the increased focus on food sovereignty affects the field?
Oh man. Oh. Yeah.
Just
That's you know what? You have a really good vision of I think where it's heading towards. So I think there's, oh man, and a lot of it has to do with what we see on social media, right? So food sovereignty. So basically she's talking about like appropriate foods through sounder methods, right, Alexis?
Mhm.
That's kind of what you're aiming towards. I think that there is a very large space for it, and I think we need it. I don't know if anyone has noticed, but there have been some issues, right, with supply and demand lately. And I think that we really need to talk about those policies again. I think that that is going to be super important, not to mention the food kind of deserts that we experience in our communities, that for maybe 5 or 6 blocks, for someone who doesn't have a car and no access to food, we need to do a better job at opening more opportunities for those people, or educating them on how to maybe build more sustainable practices, like using smaller greenhouses, like farming, things like that, and kind of aiding people by teaching them, not just kind of giving them fish and not teaching them how to do that sustainably. That was a really great question.